Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, new evidence. Day 3 of testimony in the trial of Derek Chauvin wrapped up with newly released footage of the moments before George Floyd's deadly encounter with police. The security and body cam video played for the jury, and what we can expect from Minneapolis this morning. Golden State tragedy. 4 people, including a child, have been killed in yet another mass shooting, this time in a business complex in Orange, California, just southeast of Los Angeles. The overnight developments and where the investigation stands this morning. Digging deeper, new details this morning on where an investigation of Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz for alleged sex trafficking began. We'll tell you how a Florida tax collector and known associate of Gaetz fits into the probe. And breaking the mold, we spoke to queer musician Semler about their hit album Preacher's Kid, which topped the Christian music charts, how a religious upbringing influenced the album, and how they hope to change the industry. And that is an interview that you are going to bring us.
Yeah, and I could have talked to Semler for hours. It was such an interesting conversation.
I can't wait to hear it later in the show. Good tease for us. But we're going to begin again today with the latest in the trial of Derek Chauvin. The third day of testimony featured never-before-seen footage from Chauvin's body-worn camera and raw emotion from a witness who broke down after hearing George Floyd call out for his mother during his arrest.
Oh my God.
Can you just explain sort of what you're feeling in this moment?
I feel helpless. I don't have a mama either.
NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster is covering the trial for us from Minneapolis. Shaq, good morning. So one of the witnesses yesterday was the 19-year-old cashier who sold George Floyd cigarettes and believed Floyd gave him a fake $20 bill. What did he say about that interaction and how he felt as the situation unfolded?
Well, he said that he spent time with George Floyd in that store. At least George saw George Floyd spending time in that store. He said that when George Floyd handed him the bill, it had a bluish tint to it and it made him suspicious. But he said he believed that George Floyd didn't realize it was a counterfeit bill, so he still accepted it. And that was something that he still feels guilty about to this day. This is all part of the prosecution laying out more context, giving us more information about what happened before Floyd ended under the knee of Derek Chauvin. We saw that newly released surveillance video of inside the Cup food store where that interaction happened. We saw the buildup to what happened when the police were called, and we saw the initial approach of the police officers to the car where George Floyd was, and about an hour of body camera video from all 4 of the officers, including for the first time ever, the body camera video from Officer Derek Chauvin, which fell off during the interaction as they were trying to force Floyd into the car. So we're getting new information. We're seeing that emotional testimony, and we're getting a more complete picture about what exactly happened on May 25th, 2020.
So, Shaq, the prosecution also played that footage you mentioned from Chauvin's body-worn camera, which the public had not seen before. Can you tell us what else we learned from that footage?
Well, it's not only Chauvin's camera, and Chauvin's camera is actually the shortest part of it. It was the newest, but it was the shortest clip that we had there. In it, you do hear him describe George Floyd at the end of the interaction while talking with Charles McMillan, who was the one who broke down on the stand. So outside of hearing his voice for the first time, the really interesting body camera was that of Officer Thomas Lane, who was one of the first officers to approach George Floyd, responding to the report of a $20 bill, a fake $20 bill. He approaches the car, and you see the situation escalate almost immediately. Within seconds, his weapon is drawn after tapping his flashlight on the window of the vehicle, and Floyd seeming startled, turning around. The door gets open, and apparently the officer says he couldn't see George Floyd's right hand, and that's what caused him to draw his weapon. You see how quickly this escalates, and you see the scuffle to get George Floyd in the car. As I said, it's about an hour of video there.
And Shaq, we've heard from 12 of the state's witnesses so far. Obviously, we can't see the jury, but do we have any idea how the jury has been reacting so far?
Well, we know that when Mr. McMillan was testifying, that was something that gave pause to everyone. I mean, if you were watching the testimony, if you watched him break down, it caught your attention on television, and that certainly is what happened inside the courtroom after they played that interaction of Mr. McMillan trying to calm down George Floyd, telling him to listen to the officers and then pleading with the officers to get their knee off of his neck. Well, that was a moment where reporters in the room say the jury actually stopped taking notes and they just looked up and watched. Overall, you get a sense that this is a very engaged jury. Many of them are taking notes. You see them sometimes cross-referencing their own notes. This is powerful testimony, and it seems to be connecting.
All right. Jack, thank you so much.
Got it.
Let's now bring in Cynthia Oxney. She's a former federal prosecutor and NBC News legal analyst. Cynthia, thank you for being with us this morning. Now, the state played a lot of body camera footage, as we've been discussing. So tell us how important that is for jurors to be able to actually see that footage to judge Chauvin's actions, since it shows you his actions. So then it just comes down to their judgment. How important is that piece of evidence?
It's really critical, and it's been beautifully presented in an organized way. So first you heard all of the eyewitnesses and what they were yelling and why they were yelling and how they felt helpless and how desperate they were. And then when you see the body cam footage, especially once he's down on the ground, first he's a little agitated, he's having trouble breathing, he's talking, and you can hear the people desperately saying, hey, get off his neck, get off his neck. And then all of a sudden, this man that now they've seen because of the video inside the store, a big, muscular, alive man, all of a sudden his body goes limp, means something very differently when you see it as opposed to when you hear about it.
Now, Cynthia, I just mentioned the fact that this shows his actions very clearly, but then it's up to the jury to basically judge those actions. Is there any potential for this to backfire if the jurors see, view, feel differently about the video?
I don't think so. I mean, the only thing that's possible is that this one juror is too emotional to be able to handle it. But they're going to have to make a decision about the excessive use of force and about the depraved heart when it comes down to jury instructions. And when they see, as they see over and over played, this man, very much alive, suddenly go completely limp. And the crowd is yelling and they're doing nothing. And the crowd is even saying, get off his neck. And supposedly Chauvin, the testimony of Chauvin, dug his knee into him a little more just to show the crowd he was in charge. It's very important testimony.
Cynthia, something else that I thought was interesting yesterday was the defense choosing not to cross-examine several witnesses. Walk us through that strategy. Why make that decision?
Wow, should have made that decision earlier. The prosecution has to present everything basically in a chronology. The defense really should have a more sort of guerrilla warfare attitude. They should get in and get out. And they have a strategy, and that is that it's about causation. This is all about causation. No, really, he didn't die because of X, Y, or Z. He just died because of the heart condition and the drugs. And instead, they have gone through all kinds of chronology, wasting the jury's time, and in fact, making the prosecution's case stronger. Especially with the guy who was the fighter. They made him an expert witness and hurt their case by their cross-examination.
Cynthia, your analysis is so appreciated. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
At least 4 people were killed, including a child, after a shooting in Southern California. Police say a gunman opened fire at a business complex in the city of Orange. It comes after mass shootings at a Colorado grocery store last week and 3 Atlanta area spas the week before that. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson joins us now from the scene. So, Steve, I know the investigation's just beginning, but what do you know so far about what happened?
Well, obviously, very early in the investigation, we hear the shooting started at around 5:30 yesterday. That's when police arrived on scene. Police say they arrived to the sound of gunfire. So the active shooting still going on. They say victims were on the street as they arrived. There was an exchange of gunfire. Police describing this as an officer-involved shooting. And then, obviously, the 4 people that died, including that child. There is a 5th victim now in the hospital, a woman who was now clinging to life, rushed to the hospital in critical condition. The shooter also in the hospital in critical condition from a gunshot wound. It is not known at this time whether or not that gunshot wound came from police or if it was self-inflicted. That office park, as you might imagine, the most generic suburban office park you can imagine, several businesses lining in there, surrounded by an apartment complex. Neighbors say their peace was just absolutely shattered when they heard those first gunshots in rapid succession. Obviously, the thrust of the investigation is to determine why, but it is still so early on. Joe?
Yeah, Steve, I know they don't exactly know where this all unfolded in the business complex, but what more can you tell us about that and what kind of offices are located there?
Well, you can see inside there, these are just several small businesses inside what looks like maybe your 2 or 3 story building, beige. It has looked like possibly a therapist or a counseling office. That may be of note, although it is not known where this shooting took place. An insurance agency, management office, just the several generic offices you would see inside a normal office complex. But again, no determination on exactly what business or even if it was in one of the businesses where the shooting took place. We know that police have described the scene as encompassing the first 2 floors of that complex and the courtyard. So one of the biggest things is also determining a timeline, exactly what the sequence of events were that led to that shooting, obviously, that happened yesterday.
And finally, Steve, as we mentioned, last night's shooting comes on the heels of 2 other high-profile mass shootings last week in Boulder, Colorado, and then the Atlanta area before that. What are you hearing from people there about something like this happening so close to home?
Well, Joe, this is Orange, California, just to orient you, about 30 miles southeast of Los Angeles. It's about 6 miles from Disneyland. This is another one of these, relatively quiet cities that had their peace shattered by something so horrific. So obviously people here are reeling. They must be at some extent scared of this tragedy that we keep seeing on a scale week to week to week and not being able to feel safe. But of course, this is the biggest shooting that has happened in Orange since 1997 when 4 people were killed at a Department of Transportation facility. So obviously there's some recollection to that and some reverberation to that. But obviously this still so fresh and early in this investigation, Joe.
Steve Patterson, thank you for your report from the scene there in Orange, California. Johnson & Johnson is now dealing with a potential delay in the production of its one-shot vaccine. About 15 million doses of the vaccine were ruined by a manufacturing error at a Baltimore facility. The FDA is now investigating what happened at the plant. The production snag comes as cases and hospitalizations keep climbing. More than 33,000 Americans are hospitalized with COVID this morning. On average, 5,000 people are now being admitted to the hospital every single day. Let's bring in NBC News Now correspondent Isa Gutierrez. So, Isa, let's first talk about that production issue with the J&J vaccine. What happened there and how is this going to impact the rollout?
Good morning, Joe. So the company says that a key ingredient in its vaccine did not meet quality control standards at this Baltimore facility. Now, it is important to note, though, that this issue did not impact doses of the vaccine that have already been distributed in the U.S. The statement from Johnson & Johnson reads, quote, "This quality control process identified one batch of drug substance that did not meet quality standards at Emergent Biosolutions, a site not yet authorized to manufacture drug substance for our COVID-19 vaccine. This batch was never advanced to the filling and finishing stages of our manufacturing process." Now, as far as how this will impact the rollout, senior administration officials are saying that essentially it will not. Now, as the FDA investigates and looks into this issue, we do expect to see delays in Johnson & Johnson shipments to the U.S. However, these officials are saying that they still expect to have enough vaccine to vaccinate all U.S. adults by the end of May as planned. Joe?
Now, Isa, let's talk about nursing homes. Early on in the pandemic, nursing homes were hot spots for the virus, as we know. Now, some researchers say that vaccinations have changed that. The numbers are pretty dramatic. What did they find?
Yeah, Joe, this is some good news. So this study that was released this week shows that coronavirus cases in nursing homes between late December and early March dropped by 96%. Now, this study, which was released by the American Healthcare Association and the National Center for Assisted Living, credits the vaccine for this drastic drop, specifically the fact that early on in the rollout, nursing home patients and staff were prioritized for the vaccine. The study also shows that coronavirus deaths dropped drastically during that time period by 91% in U.S. nursing homes. Joe?
Nisa, the CDC has released its study on the leading causes of death among Americans last year. So where did COVID rank, and just how much of an impact did coronavirus have on deaths in the U.S.?
Yeah, Joe. So the CDC is saying this week that COVID-19 was the third leading cause of death in the U.S. in 2020, behind heart disease and cancer. Overall, there was a 16% increase in deaths in the U.S. last year over 2019. COVID-19 was listed as the underlying cause of death for over 340,000 of them, killing Americans more than unintentional injuries, strokes, chronic lower respiratory disease, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, influenza, pneumonia, and kidney disease, all which are in the top 10 leading causes of death in the U.S. Now, according to this study, the deadliest months of 2020 were early on in the pandemic in April, and then during that holiday surge that we saw back in December. Joe?
That's surprising numbers there. All right, Issa, thank you so much.
In the steel town of Pittsburgh, President Joe Biden made his pitch yesterday for a new massive $2 trillion plan to overhaul the economy with a focus on rebuilding the nation's infrastructure.
It's not a plan that tinkers around the edges. It's a once-in-a-generation investment in America, unlike anything we've seen or done since we built the interstate highway system and the space race decades ago. In fact, it's the largest American jobs investment since World War II.
NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoly joins us now with more. Mike, good morning. So tell us a little bit about what the president laid out regarding this proposal and what his argument is for needing this sweeping legislative package right now, because it's an infrastructure package, but there's some other stuff in there, and particularly on the heels of just signing that nearly $2 trillion COVID relief package weeks ago. Why does he say we need this right now? What's in it?
Yeah, this is more than just an infrastructure package, as you say. The Build Back Better plan that he rolled out over the course of the campaign actually closed in on more than $4 trillion if you add up all the pieces of it. And this is just the initial offering. When you take a look at the numbers, remember the Recovery Act, which Vice President Joe Biden helped oversee in the Obama administration, itself was $800 billion. Well, look at some of the figures here. We got more than $600 billion on the traditional infrastructure, brick and mortar projects like roads and bridges. You have $650 billion on things like the clean energy proposals, home infrastructure, broadband technology as well. $400 billion on what you would call the sort of home caregiving issues, dealing with especially senior care. But I want to zero in on that last price tag that are on the screen, the $580 billion for research and development. When you heard the president make the urgent case for this, he was talking about the American competitiveness, the fact that, as he said, China is eating our lunch. Research and development, trying to develop the new technologies, is critical to the sales pitch for this plan, and part of why he thinks the price tag needs to be what it is.
So, Mike, you point out the price tag is even bigger potentially than we've been talking about here. So the big question now is, how will President Biden sell this proposal to Congress? He said he spoke with Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell about the plan, but McConnell's signaling his opposition, calling the proposal a quote Trojan horse like he did with the COVID package. But then also, even within his own party, there are some moderate Democrats who are sort of siding with those Republicans. But then there's the far left side who isn't really seeing what they want either. How's he going to do this?
Yeah, the White House is giving a little bit more time to try to pass this infrastructure package than they did that $1.9 trillion rescue plan, in part because they know it's going to be a tough sell. And you heard the president yesterday saying he's welcoming input from all sides. Well, right now, the input from all sides is negative. Take a listen to what Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the House, said yesterday.
I've heard about it. Concerned about raising taxes, concerned about they're implementing the Green New Deal. It seems less about infrastructure, more about tax increases, and more about the Green New Deal. I am one as a Republican that would like to sit down and find a bipartisan bill on infrastructure. But if it's about tax increases and the Green New Deal, I think that's a hard thing to sell.
Anytime you're talking about tax increases, which the president is proposing on corporations in order to pay for this, you're going to get criticism and probably staunch opposition from the right. But then when you consider what we're also seeing on the left, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, an important voice, of course, from progressives, saying this is not nearly big enough. It needs to be bigger.
And Mike, the White House says now, let's switch gears, President Biden will hold his first full cabinet meeting of his administration today. What will he focus on in this meeting?
Well, this is going to be the kickoff of that sales campaign. Especially, I think there's going to be a focus today on Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who's going to be a real spokesperson traveling across the country to try to promote the need for this. Now that the president does have most of his cabinet, of course, they have a lot of other things to discuss. But this infrastructure package is the real impetus. And look forward, sometime in April is what we've been expecting for the president then to go to Congress session there to also lay out this proposal.
All right, Mike, thank you.
Thanks.
Time to get a check on your morning news now weather.
Janessa Webb is with us this morning. Hey, Janessa, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to April, and it feels like February in most locations across the East Coast. Our storm system, yes, it has arrived, and the snow is going to continue to linger across areas of the Northeast until about early afternoon, and then the system will push offshore. Not too bad right now. We're just seeing some lingering raindrops from New York City to the Boston area. The brunt of the heavy moisture is sitting in Philadelphia right now. Also, the higher elevation, we will pick up another additional 1 to 2 inches in these spots from northern New England to interior New York before we're completely done with the system. The problem for today, even though we're going to lose the moisture behind this front, is very windy conditions, and that's going to cause our temperatures to really drop. So we're going to really notice it across areas of the Northeast to mid-Atlantic, and that's why we are dealing with 86 million people under some kind of freeze alert. We're seeing temperatures, they're about 20 to 25 degrees below average, guys.
Wow.
Thank you so much,
Very
Janessa.
cool. Thanks, Janessa.
Coming up, another Biden administration rollback of some controversial Trump-era policies.
The Pentagon's new regulations surrounding transgender people in the military, up next.
In the news this morning, an update to a story we've been following all week. Iowa Democrat Rita Hart is ending her challenge to a congressional seat, a race she lost by just 6 votes. Hart contested the election, contending that 22 votes had gone uncounted, and those votes would have swung the election. Hart had asked a House committee to investigate, which would have taken months. In response, House Republicans called Democrats hypocrites for contesting the results after Democrats criticized Republicans for contesting the presidential election on January 6th. Republican Marionette Miller Meeks will now assume the seat and head to Washington. Sony Music Publishing has netted another legend. Paul Simon has sold his entire song catalog to the music giant. The deal includes more than 400 tracks, including You Can Call Me Al, and music from his Simon and Garfunkel days like Bridge Over Troubled Water. Sony will own the rights to over 6 decades of Simon's music. The financial terms of the deal have not been disclosed, but it's expected to be north of tens of millions of dollars. The Beatles and Carole King are also under Sony Music. And the Nebraska Supreme Court has cleared the way for a lesbian couple to adopt a 3-year-old child who has lived with them since birth. The justices overturned a lower court's decision. That judge had rejected the adoption, citing a law dictionary that defined the word wife as a woman who has a lawful living husband. Nebraska's high court rejected that argument, saying the state's adoption laws allow any married couple to adopt as long as both partners are on the application. The couple's attorney says winning cases like this makes it clear that LGBTQ rights are not a passing fad. It was a strange case in the fact that that lower court judge had literally cited a dictionary definition and not actual law when trying to make the argument, and the Supreme Court unanimously shot that down.
Look at that. All right, Joe, thank you so much. NBC News has confirmed that Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz is under investigation for possible sex trafficking. The investigation was first reported by the New York Times, which said the Justice Department was looking into whether Representative Gaetz had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old and paid for her to travel with him. In a statement posted to Twitter Tuesday, Gaetz denied the allegation and said the investigation was part of, quote, an organized criminal extortion involving a former DOJ official. NBC News correspondent for investigations Tom Winter joins us now. Tom, good morning. Now, A lot of this is quite bizarre. In addition to what was posted to Twitter, we also heard this interview with him on Fox News that really just seemed to kind of conflate multiple things going on here. So I'm hoping that first you can just help us separate this out and pick up with what I just said, Gates's denial, this so-called criminal extortion. You've learned that that's actually an entirely different investigation. Tell us all the various things going on here.
Right. Well, just to add to the complication, good morning, Savannah, there's 3 separate investigations is what Pete Williams and myself, what we've learned, what we've reviewed over the course of a series of court documents. So what's happening here is this started with an investigation into a Florida official, former Seminole County tax collector Joel Micah Greenberg. It was an investigation that began approximately a year ago, and they were looking into him for a whole host of crimes, which he's since been charged with. There was an original indictment, 3 superseding indictments, but included in that investigation, he was also involved allegedly with sex trafficking. Now, that person has proclaimed their innocence and says that they look forward to trial. They've pleaded not guilty previously to charges, but we're told that out of that investigation came a second investigation, and that's the investigation into Matt Gaetz and this idea of whether or not he was involved with sex trafficking. And then the third investigation is the one that you referenced, which is this investigation into any potential extortion efforts to try to extort money from Matt Gaetz and his father in exchange for making these sex trafficking allegations go away, Savannah.
So, Tom, first of all, can I just say I love the visual of you and Pete poring over these court documents for us and trying to make sense of what the heck's going on here. So thank you. We appreciate you doing that for us. If we could dig in on the sex trafficking investigation, since that's really the big one here. Tell us what that means. What are investigators looking into? What do they think he maybe did? And you touched on how it began, but why did this all start?
Right. So, Savannah, what you have to try to prove if you're the FBI and federal prosecutors is not just that Matt Gaetz, when you involve sex trafficking, to be clear, when it's a sex trafficking investigation, not that there was sex involving an underage minor, but the second thing is whether or not there was money exchanged or gifts exchanged or some effort to pay for that conduct to occur. That's when we get into sex trafficking charges, and there's all sorts of different criteria under there, and there's no reason for us to conduct a law school this morning, but that's what prosecutors and investigators are going to look into. And as you said, that did come out of another case where, as I mentioned, there was sex trafficking allegations involved there.
So, Tom, I think a couple steps down the road here, the question is going to be, what does his political future look like in light of this? But let's just stick broadly here. You know, when somebody is charged with something like this, what are the potential legal consequences Gaetz could be facing?
You know, I think for Congressman Gaetz, it's going to depend a lot on what are the elements of the crime. But certainly if he gets to a point, and to be clear, he's completely denied any relationship with a 17-year-old, let alone any sort of sex trafficking. But if he was to be charged with this at some point, they're quite serious charges. Sometimes they can carry mandatory minimums. That means if you're convicted, you're definitely going to do a certain amount of prison time. And those can be steep, 10 to 40 years, Savannah. So I think his legal concerns are probably a bigger iceberg in front of him than his political ones at this point.
All right. Great analysis. Great insight, Tom. Again, bizarre. So thank you for helping us try to understand. We appreciate you being with us.
Sure thing.
Transgender and gender nonconforming people are now allowed again to serve in the military. The Biden administration has reversed a Trump-era policy banning openly transgender troops from serving in uniform. Transgender troops will also be given access to medical care needed for their transition. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby made the announcement yesterday on International Transgender Day of Visibility.
Secretary of Defense strongly believes that the all-volunteer force thrives when it is composed of diverse Americans who can meet the high standards for military service, and an inclusive force that strengthens.
Joining us now is Dan DeLuce, NBC News national security and global affairs reporter. So, Dan, shortly after his inauguration, President Biden signed executive orders which barred transgender service members from being kicked out. Yesterday's move, as we mentioned, happened on Transgender Day of Visibility. So aside from the symbolism of that, why change the policy now?
Joe, the administration is anxious to move on with this, and they issued these policy guidelines to flesh out the executive order that the president had signed in his first week in office. And they really do want to open the doors to transgender people and restore the policy that was in place when Obama was president.
How soon now could transgender service members begin serving?
Well, really, starting today, the policy guidelines go into effect legally within 30 days. But the message went out that transgender people can go to recruiters immediately and start the process to join the military if they qualify. And so what's interesting is they also issued an order where they will look at people who are discharged or denied the chance to re-enlist during the Trump era policies. And so it'll be interesting to see how many people get reinstated who wanted to serve and were denied.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
The CEOs of two of Georgia's biggest companies are slamming the state's new voting rights laws after other Fortune 500 CEOs spoke out and after mounting pressure from voting rights activists. Delta CEO Ed Bastian said in a memo to his entire staff, "I need to make it crystal clear that the final bill is unacceptable and does not match Delta's values." And here's what Coca-Cola CEO James Quincy said on CNBC.
Let me be crystal clear and unequivocal. This legislation is unacceptable.
NBC News senior political reporter Jane Tim joins us now. Jane, always great to have you. Now, remind us first what's in these laws, and then also tell us about why these two CEOs have both come out against them so quickly after they began being targeted by activists.
Yeah, so, I mean, this bill is almost 100 pages long, but I think the big ones to remember is that it makes it harder to vote by mail, particularly if you don't have a driver's license. It shortens the runoff race, and it adds a host of restrictions, big and small, to the process overall. Things like you can't give water to voters who are standing in line, something activists have been doing for years. But the reason I think what we're seeing this week is sort of a watershed moment of attention being drawn to this process, in part because Georgia's law just caught attention from so many people. But also you're seeing leaders in the business world say, our people need to vote. We need to change this.
Jane, how's Georgia's governor responding?
You know, I think we have some sound of him in his own words explaining how he's responding. Let's play that.
I understand that they have public companies and they have boards that are pressuring them, but that still doesn't change the truth and the fact that this bill expands voting access, especially on the weekends in Georgia. It uses a voter ID, which is free, for absentee ballot with mail that'll speed up the process. It requires county elections officials to continuously tabulate, to get every vote counted, and it's a secure, accessible, fair way to do it.
So as you can see, Kemp is really trying hard to point out the parts of the bill that do expand access, like that expanded early voting. But what he's cherry picking some of the better parts for voters, I would say, than he is looking at the full picture of the bill.
And Jane, so how does this kind of corporate pressure affect the state? We see these companies that obviously employ a lot of people, bring a lot of money to the state. What does this mean? And are we going to be any closer to seeing this law get repealed because of something like this?
You know, the Georgia legislature adjourned last night, so they are gone. They actually considered a repeal of a tax credit to Delta as a punishment in the state house. They passed out the state house. It did not go through the state Senate. But I think what you're seeing is that businesses, it's bad for business to have voting restrictions in those states. And you're going to see businesses use that clout around the country, perhaps, to push back against restrictions like these.
Jane Tim, thank you so much. Coming up, a resurgence in COVID cases is forcing France to lock down again, while in the UK, restrictions are slowly being lifted.
Now, Britain's unorthodox vaccine rollout could be setting the country up for success. That's next. As more people get their COVID shots and restrictions are lifted, a new controversy is taking shape. Should businesses separate the vaccinated from the unvaccinated? For more on that, NBC News correspondent Cal Perry joins us from the American Airlines Arena, home of the Miami Heat. So, Cal, tonight the Heat will be opening up a vaccinated-only section in the arena for fans. Tell us more about the team's plans and how fans are reacting.
Yeah, so the idea is simple enough to try to increase attendance by opening up two sections in the lower bowl for fans that have been vaccinated. You go to gate number 6 here at American Airlines Arena. If you're one of the 450 people doing this, you need to show your CDC vaccination card showing that you had vaccines at least 2 weeks ago, as well as any kind of government ID. They will match the name up. It's the matching the name up that's going to make this difficult to do on a wider scale. So this really is sort of a test run happening here in Miami. Of course, it is a little bit controversial amongst fans. I suppose anything in sports is. We spoke to some folks yesterday. Take a listen.
I think that it will increase the amount of people that will go and get vaccinated to visit our favorite team from Miami. I already got vaccinated, so I'm already ready to go and buy the tickets.
I mean, I don't think it's fair, especially for the people that can't get it. Like, I'm pretty sure they want to be close to the players as well as the other people.
This is America. We run off freedom of choice, freedom of speech, and if somebody wants to go to the game or go to a restaurant, they should be able to.
Now, folks who sit in that vaccinated section will still need masks. They'll still need to social distance, though there'll only be one seat between the pods. That is tickets of either 2 or 4. Eric Spoelstra, the coach here of the Miami Heat, says really anything to get attendance up. Only 4,000 folks still coming to the games here in Miami. They're keeping that number low for obvious reasons, Joe.
I think this is a debate that is only going to grow in the coming weeks and months. And Cal, this isn't just about sports. Folks in the restaurant and hospitality industries are also making some tough decisions about how to reopen safely. And it is a dilemma. After a challenging year, they want to make money, but they know we're still in a pandemic. What are you hearing from some industry leaders?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, at any of these basketball arenas, just as one example, it's also opening day in Major League Baseball. You have restaurants, of course, clustered near to these arenas. We spoke to a hospitality advocate about trying to get things open more quickly, as you say. Take a listen.
You know, it could be an answer to getting things open a little more quickly at this point. It's something that I've talked to my team about to see if it made sense. And the one thing that I don't understand, if you're vaccinated, I'm fully vaccinated. So why do you care where you sit at that point?
You're right. The debate on this show is only going to increase, whether it's the sports arenas or restaurants, as we look at who's been vaccinated and who hasn't. Joe?
Interesting story. Cal Perry, thank you so much.
Pfizer says its vaccine works against the contagious variant first found in South Africa. The company released its trial results this morning, and it showed the vaccine protects against the variant 6 months after the second dose with no serious safety concerns. Let's bring in Dr. Stella Sappho. She's an internal medicine physician in New York City. Dr. Sappho, thank you for being with us. Now, scientists were concerned this variant may be able to escape existing vaccines. We've heard it's essentially a race between the two. So how important are these results?
These results are tremendous. I think they really show another point of good news. We had the sense that what would happen with the South African variant would be that you would have immunity, but you wouldn't make as many antibodies. And the question was, as you move into real world scenarios, should we anticipate that would mean more infections? And so this phase 3 trial from Pfizer, although it's not necessarily real world, as in, now it's come to market and people are using it as they would in their normal lives, it's still very, very, very comforting to know that the South African variant doesn't escape your immunity. And it really is just another reason to go ahead and get vaccinated.
Let's now talk about gatherings, especially as we have a holiday weekend coming up, Passover and Easter. We saw spikes after every holiday last year, but when vaccinated people are meeting up with unvaccinated people, what kind of precautions should we all be taking?
So the CDC has really helped with this by trying to be as clear as possible about what you can do if you're vaccinated versus if you're unvaccinated. And it's, the way that I tell my patients is just thinking about how we still want to be really careful when we think about medium and large size gatherings or being out in public. So it's masks, social distancing. But what's so amazing for those of us that are starved for, small gatherings is that if you're vaccinated, you can be indoors with other vaccinated individuals without a mask. That's fantastic news. The other place that's interesting is that if you're vaccinated and you're only with one, maybe even two other households, but certainly with one other household that includes unvaccinated individuals, if those unvaccinated individuals are at low risk of severe COVID, so maybe folks that are not much older or don't have chronic conditions, you can also be indoors. If you're vaccinated, they're unvaccinated, it's a small gathering, you can be indoors without masks. That's it, though. People are talking about, we can travel, we can vacation with, large pods, and that hasn't changed. The CDC is being very careful in making that recommendation because the reality is the transmission of COVID is still high. And so until that kind of goes down, we're not going to see the move, about non-essential travel.
Yeah, the guidance has been quite conservative, and it is confusing when you hear things like, hey, if at this sporting event, if you're vaccinated, you get to do X, Y, and Z. That is a little bit more than what they've given guidance on so far. So we'll have to see what happens. Dr. Safo, I also want to now ask you about testing. I know we've been focused a lot on vaccinations, but the country is bracing for a possible fourth wave. So I'm just wondering what type of advice you have for people who should be vigilant about getting tested, even if they are around people who are vaccinated, if they start feeling any type of symptoms.
Man, it's so hard because every time we make a kind of a step forward with COVID, we take a step back. And so the step forward is the vaccines. Unfortunately, the step back is that people are not getting tested. And the reason that testing matters is that if a lot of folks will have COVID and will be asymptomatic. If you go and you get tested, even if you're asymptomatic and you have COVID or you have mild symptoms, at least you know. So you can quarantine, you can take safety measures that'll protect others from getting infected. If you don't test, you don't know. And I think the reasons that people aren't testing is we're tired. Folks are really tired of anything starting with the C word. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to think about it. Testing has been cumbersome. You have to wait in line. You have to quarantine until you know if you have symptoms. So I think people are kind of using this, whatever, most of my community is getting vaccinated. I'll get vaccinated. I don't have to test. And that's wrong. We're going to end up, stepping backwards when it comes to how we're doing with COVID if we don't test.
Dr. Safo, you are so right. COVID's got 5 letters in it, but I think we all feel about it the way we do a lot of 4-letter words. Dr. Safo, thank you for joining us. It's always great to have you.
Thank you.
Coming up, a queer artist who's tearing up the iTunes charts, the Christian charts, that is.
I sat down with the trailblazing musician known as Semler for their take on what it means to be a preacher's kid. That's next. Time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
CNBC's Bertha Coombs is back with us. Hi, Bertha. Happy Thursday.
Hey, happy Thursday, Joe and Savannah. Google says it may have some of its employees start returning to its U.S. offices over the next month. The search giant owned by Alphabet says the initial period will be voluntary as buildings reopen with capacity limits. Company is advising workers to get vaccinated, but it's not making it mandatory for the return to the office. Ford will halt production for 2 weeks this month at its truck plant in Michigan, and it's also going to idle the truck side of a plant in Missouri for a week due to the global shortage of semiconductors. We've told you a lot about this. Chips are in short supply, so Ford is going to temporarily suspend work and cancel plant overtime at several other North American factories as well. Like most automakers, Ford has been struggling to secure enough chips, competing with other industries such as the makers of consumer electronics. And a new report from consulting firm Alex Partners finds half of consumers say their spending habits have changed permanently due to the pandemic. About 44% of U.S. consumers fall into the most anxious category, meaning they're experiencing the most significant and permanent changes to their buying habits. Young people are feeling the most vulnerable, with 32% concerned about their financial health. About 30% say they plan to shop more online, but many say online commerce doesn't currently work well for them. Works pretty well for me. I think the thing that's probably going to stick with me is just keeping enough toilet paper on hand. Before I didn't really think about it. Now I always want to make sure I have an extra pack.
That's if we've learned anything in the last year.
Wow, PTSD, Bertha, because we could not find any. But right? Good call, good call. And the thing, though, with online shopping is just the delays. I like when you go in a store and you can go home with it the same day. That's how I feel about it. All right, Bertha, thank you.
Yeah, that's true.
If you recently looked toward the top of the iTunes Christian music charts, you might have seen an album titled Preacher's Kid, which seems to fit right in with all the other music in the genre. But you'll also see something surprising, a parental advisory for explicit lyrics. And what you'll hear is a message about faith told through the voice of a queer artist named Semler. I spoke with the singer. They hope more LGBTQ representation in the genre will change hearts and minds.
Oh, what a terrible one it's been to learn that my blessings are things you call sins.
Grace Semler Baldridge is quickly rising to the top of the Christian music scene, even spending a few days in the top spot on the iTunes Christian chart. The album Preacher's Kid is Semler's debut, a labor of love written entirely during the pandemic.
I would describe it as a quarantine baby. I had a bunch of thoughts. I wanted to get things out of my system. So it sounds kind of grungy. It's like acoustic grunge. in a God-honoring way, I guess.
It's not your typical Christian album. Semler's faith is explored with a lot of honesty and the occasional curse word.
I know many of the most Christ-like people have thrown down a holy F-bomb now and again.
Your album is called Preacher's Kid. Are you a preacher's kid?
I am indeed. My dad is an Episcopal priest. I grew up in the rectory. I played a lot of pranks around the church growing up. That was very much my upbringing.
Well, Dad was welcoming and accepting when Semler came out. Others were not. The artist was exposed to anti-LGBTQ attitudes at church camps and mission trips. Struggles illustrated in Semler's lyrics.
But I'm a child of God, just in case you forgot. And you cast me out every single chance that you got, and that's your loss, not mine. I'll be better than fine.
I'm a gay man. I'm a Christian. I've always been able to find churches where it's not a problem, where it's accepting. But I know and I've witnessed the alternative to that.
Yeah.
What has your experience been like?
It feels like a bait and switch. Because I grew up in, in a Christian environment where I felt that it would, maybe be okay to be me. So when it's been sort of Uno reversed, it's really heartbreaking, and I've had people exit my life and I've had relationships crumble. And I know that I'm not alone in that. And honestly, that's sort of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the sort of marginalization that we see from LGBTQ plus people at the hands of Christians.
Semler's also heard the criticism this album may not fit everyone's definition of Christian music.
That's fine if people don't identify with it. Christian music is strange as a genre whereby everyone is meant to like and support and fully endorse every single project. We don't see that in other genres. I love pop music, but there are some pop albums that aren't for me. I don't say that it doesn't belong in that genre.
Is this a wake-up call for the Christian music industry to say, hey, there is a desire, there is a thirst for music that maybe doesn't sound like what you typically hear?
I hope so. I was told by a Christian music executive once that there was no space or interest in this type of project, that talking about being gay, talking about having issues with Christianity, but still falling into faith, that there wasn't really that market. And we've shown with Preacher's Kid that there is a market. So I'm hopeful that this could serve as a little bit of a wake-up call to the industry that you have to be more inclusive and curious to other perspectives in your genre.
The only songs I have are Christian, so I have to think.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.